Stranger was moving furniture into my house. I rushed home only to find my key didn't fit, my name was gone from the mailbox, and my brother? He'd sold it. With my parents' help, they had a goal not just to make me homeless. I've lived in my house for almost 7 years. Bought it straight after landing a steady engineering job. Paid every dime myself. No cosigner, no roommates, no financial rescue. That house was my world. A 2-story starter home with chipped paint and squeaky floors, but it was mine. My brother, Trevor, has always been the wild card. You know the type. Dropped out of 2 different colleges. Started 3 businesses. Failed all 3. Somehow always landed back on his feet. Somehow always had our parents cleaning up his messes. Me? I was the stable one. The one we don't have to worry about. Yeah, famous last words. A few months ago, my boss offered me 2 weeks off on short notice. I hadn't taken real time off in years, so when a buddy of mine found a last-minute package deal to Hawaii, I jumped. Paid up front, packed quick, locked the doors, triple-checked the windows. Told my parents I'd be unreachable most of the time because of bad Wi-Fi and roaming costs. They were thrilled for me, or so they said. The night before my flight, I got a text from Trevor. Yo, when you coming back? I told him. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Didn't think much of it. Flight, beach, cocktails, everything was perfect. I let my shoulders unclench for the first time in years. Until day 9 of my vacation, I got a weird notification from my Ring doorbell app. Motion detected. I opened it half asleep, expecting to see a stray cat or maybe a delivery guy. Instead, I saw people carrying boxes, moving furniture into my house. I sat up so fast I knocked my drink over. At first, I thought maybe I was seeing old footage, maybe the app glitched, but then I saw a woman I'd never seen before pulling my mattress, through the front door. I tried to open the live feed. Connection failed. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, heart pounding, brain stuck. Finally, I messaged Trevor. Bro, are you at my place? What's going on? No response. I texted my parents. Hey, random question. Anyone at my house? Thought I saw something on my cam. No response. I refreshed the app. Nothing. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I even tell them? Hi, I'm in another country, but I think someone's moving into my house, so I waited for my phone to buzz. Nothing. The next morning, I called my neighbor, Ms. Evelyn. She's an older lady, retired, always watering her garden. Sweetest woman ever. She picked up immediately. Jordan. Hi, honey. Oh my goodness. How's Hawaii? I said, it's beautiful. Quick question, have you seen anyone at my place? Her tone shifted instantly. There was a long pause. Then she said, carefully, well, yes. I thought you knew. Knew what? A couple with a little boy. Moved in a few days ago. Big moving truck and everything. Your parents were there too, helping them unpack. My mind short-circuited. My parents were there? She said, yes, dear. Your mom was carrying kitchen boxes. Your dad was setting up a barbecue. I thanked her. Hung up. Stared at the beach outside my hotel window. It looked so peaceful, like nothing could possibly be wrong. I booked the earliest flight home. When I landed, it was pouring rain. Midnight. My suitcase wheels jammed with mud as I dragged them to the Uber. My stomach twisted itself into knots the closer we got to my street. When we turned the corner, I almost told the driver to keep going. There was a brand new mailbox in front of my house. Fresh landscaping. Different curtains in the window. The porch light was on, and the wreath on the door said welcome home in a handwriting that wasn't mine. I stumbled out of the car, left my suitcase on the curb, walked straight to the front door. I rang the bell. A man answered, mid-40s, confused look on his face. Can I help you? He asked. I just stared at him. I said, this is my house. He laughed like I made a joke, then frowned when I didn't. No, sir. We bought this place 2 weeks ago. It's ours now. I felt the ground tilt. I thought I was going to pass out. I stammered. Bought it? From who? He blinked, confused. From Trevor. He said it was a family sale. You weren't living here anymore. Said you moved overseas permanently. Overseas? Permanently. I almost threw up right there on the porch. I stumbled back down the steps. The guy was still talking. Something about paperwork. Something about closing dates. About having the title and deed. I couldn't hear any of it. All I heard was my own heart pounding and the rain hitting the sidewalk and my brother's voice in my memory. Yo, when you coming back? He wasn't asking because he missed me. He was asking to make sure I wouldn't be home to stop him. I stood there on the sidewalk, soaked in cold rain, staring at the house that no longer belonged to me, feeling like the world had tipped sideways and nobody cared to warn me. The new owner closed the door with a polite nod, probably thinking I was drunk, lost, or crazy, and for a second, even I wasn't sure he was wrong. I dragged my soggy suitcase to the curb and fumbled for my phone, hands numb, brain whirring like a broken fan. The first thing I did was call Trevor. It went straight to voicemail, not even a single ring, like he had been ready for this exact moment and blocked me ahead of time. I called again, hoping maybe the network glitched, but it bounced to voicemail even faster, like the line itself was allergic to me. When I tried texting, my stomach dropped because the message didn't even send. It said message undeliverable immediately, like I had been cut off, erased, blocked out of his life with the push of a button. I wasn't ready to accept that my brother had stolen from me and then made himself unreachable, but every second of silence screamed that it was true. I called my parents' neck, fingers trembling as I pulled up their number, praying that maybe they would tell me it was some misunderstanding, some stupid mistake that could still be fixed. My mom answered on the first ring, her voice clear, alert, and suspiciously calm for 1 in the morning. Jordan, she said, using that fake cheerful tone she reserved for dealing with store clerks and inconvenient relatives. Why are you calling so late? I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles went white. I didn't waste a single second pretending to make small talk. Where is Trevor? I demanded, my voice cracking under the weight of anger I hadn't even begun to process. For a long moment she said nothing, and I could almost hear the mental gears spinning on her end, trying to figure out how much I already knew. When she finally spoke, her voice was laced with that patient condescension she always used when telling me I was overreacting. Sweetheart, we need to talk, she said, as if she were about to scold me for bad table manners at Thanksgiving, not for helping my brother steal my home. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling the raindrops slide down my face like tears I wasn't ready to admit were real. We needed to talk before you gave away my house, I snapped, the words tasting like acid in my mouth. Still, she didn't sound sorry. She didn't even sound particularly emotional about it. She sighed, like she was explaining something to a stubborn child, and said, Jordan, you're always off working or traveling. You don't need a big house. Trevor does. He's trying to build a future, you know? The rage that boiled up in me wasn't just about the house. It was about every birthday missed because of Trevor's drama, every holiday where I got a sweater and he got a car, every time I was told to be the bigger person when he wrecked something important to me. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep my voice steady even though my hands were shaking violently. You helped him steal from me, I said, making sure each word hit like a hammer. Mom didn't deny it. She didn't even hesitate. You're making this uglier than it needs to be, she said, her voice softening like she was trying to pull me back into the web. You're blowing this out of proportion, Jordan. Family helps each other. I laughed, a harsh, broken sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. Family helps each other, right? By forging documents, by selling a man's home out from under him while he's 3,000 miles away. I asked the one question that had been clawing at my brain since I landed, the one thing that could still make this worse. Did you forge my signature, or did Trevor do it? The silence that followed was so loud I could hear my blood pounding in my ear. She didn't answer, and that silence was an answer in itself. I felt my whole body go rigid, the kind of frozen rage that doesn't explode. It just hardens layer by layer into something unbreakable. Without another word, I hung up and let the phone fall into my lap. The rain soaked through my jacket, but I couldn't make myself move. Every part of me wanted to scream, to kick something, to rage at the universe for letting this happen, but all I could do was sit there, breathing hard, trying not to completely lose it on a stranger's front lawn. At some point, Ms. Evelyn, my elderly neighbor who used to bring me homemade cookies on Sundays, must have noticed me through her window. She hurried outside, clutching an umbrella in one hand and a thick coat in the other, her gardening shoes squelching against the wet pavement. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice trembling with sympathy as she knelt beside me. "Come inside. You'll catch your death out here." I wanted to tell her no, to sit there until the world swallowed me whole, but the kind concern in her face broke something loose in me. I nodded numbly and let her help me up, my legs stiff and clumsy like I had forgotten how to use them. Inside her warm living room, with a heavy knitted blanket wrapped around me and a cup of tea clutched between frozen hands, the horror of it all finally started to sink in. I told her everything, in short, choppy sentences at first, then faster and faster until the words tripped over each other. She listened without interrupting once, her face growing more horrified with every detail. When I finally ran out of breath, Ms. Evelyn set her tea down with a decisive clink. "You need to call the police," she said, her voice sharper than I had ever heard it. For the first time all night, a small, cold ember of hope flickered in my chest. Maybe I wasn't powerless. Ms. Evelyn didn't just say it. She stood up, grabbed her cordless phone, and handed it to me like a weapon. The tea rattled slightly in my hand as I dialed the non-emergency police number, forcing my voice to stay calm when my mind was anything but. It took 3 transfers, a long awkward explanation, and a painfully long wait before a tired-sounding officer finally agreed to send someone by to take a statement. While I waited, I couldn't stop pacing. Every creak of Ms. Evelyn's floorboards made me flinch. Every flash of headlights outside made my stomach twist. Finally, after what felt like years, a patrol car pulled up. The officer, a solid, serious man in his 40s, stepped out and knocked gently at Ms. Evelyn's door. He introduced himself as Officer Ramirez and asked me to start from the beginning. By the time I finished, Ramirez was frowning hard enough to leave permanent lines in his forehead. "This sounds serious," he said, pulling out a notepad. "Do you have proof that you own the house prior to this alleged sale?" I dug into my bag and yanked out the only documents I had: old utility bills, an insurance policy, a few scanned PDFs I had saved to my phone. It wasn't enough for an arrest, but it was enough to make Ramirez's frown deepen into something closer to anger. He explained carefully that this was a civil matter unless I could prove criminal intent: forged signatures, falsified documents, theft under false pretenses. If you can get documentation that shows you never consented to sell, we might be talking about a criminal case, he said. Otherwise, it's going to start in civil court. I nodded, even though every word felt like sandpaper against my brain. Civil court, legal fees, months of dragging this nightmare through a broken system. I felt like I was drowning already. Still, I thanked him for taking the time. He gave me his card and told me to call if anything escalated. After he left, Ms. Evelyn pressed a sandwich into my hand and told me to eat. I didn't even realize how hungry I was until I bit into it and tasted something real, something grounding. Somewhere between bites, I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry about this anymore. I pulled out my phone and started searching the county clerk's website. It took half an hour, but eventually I found the property transaction record. It was right there in black and white. Sold, seller, Trevor, buyer, Charles and Diane Field. Trevor had signed as the legal owner. The signature was almost identical to mine. Almost, but not enough. I could see it. The loop on the J was tighter. The slant on the R was different. Whoever forged it had copied an old signature, probably one Trevor had seen on a birthday card or an old homework slip. I screenshot everything. Every page. Every document. Then I scrolled down and saw something that made my blood turn to ice. Attached to the sale was a power of attorney document, dated 2 weeks before my flight. It stated that I had granted Trevor full authority to act on my behalf regarding the sale of the house, complete with my signature, and I recognized the names instantly. My parents, my own mother and father had signed as witnesses to a forged power of attorney that gave my brother permission to sell my house. I stared at the screen, hands trembling harder than ever. They hadn't just helped, they had actively conspired to screw me over, and they thought they would get away with it. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, trying not to throw my phone across Ms. Evelyn's living room. I needed proof, a hard physical proof. First thing the next morning, I drove straight to the county recorder's office, feeling like a ghost wearing my own skin. The clerk behind the counter was chipper, asking if I needed help. I handed her the property address and asked for copies of every document related to the sale. She printed them without hesitation. When I saw the stack, thick, heavy, too real, I wanted to rip it apart. Instead, I paid, took the file, and sat in my car flipping through it. Every page was worse than the last. There were fake emails printed out and attached to the paperwork, supposedly from me, saying things like, I am relocating overseas permanently and authorized Trevor, last name, to manage my property. The grammar wasn't even mine. It was clumsy, awkward, filled with phrases I would never use. It was fake. All of it. Meticulously, aggressively fake. And the worst part? The notary who stamped the power of attorney had a legitimate business license, which meant the notary either got scammed or paid off. I took a photo of every single page and sent it to Susan, a lawyer I found online who specialized in real estate fraud and property disputes. I didn't sugarcoat it in my email. They stole my house. My brother forged my signature. My parents witnessed it. I want to burn this to the ground. Her response came in less than 10 minutes. Short, crisp, and brutal. This is actionable. Come to my office immediately. I didn't even bother going home to shower or change. I drove straight from the courthouse parking lot to Susan's office, gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands were cramping. When I got there, she was already waiting by the door, a slim folder in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, like she had been preparing for battle long before I showed up. We didn't waste time with small talk. Inside her office, with its heavy bookshelves and faint smell of lemon cleaner, she laid everything out with military precision. This is full-scale property fraud, Susan said, tapping the stack of forged documents with her pen. And because there's clear evidence of forgery, witness tampering, and possibly notary fraud, this crosses over into criminal charges. I nodded stiffly, heart hammering so loudly I could barely hear her. We'll file an emergency injunction to halt any further transfer of the property, she continued. We'll petition to have the sale reversed based on fraud, and we'll pursue charges against your brother and possibly your parents, depending on how involved they were. I swallowed hard, trying to absorb the scope of what she was saying. Charges against my own family. A part of me still wanted to scream that it couldn't possibly be real, that there had to be some mistake, that no mother would witness a fake signature just to screw her own son. But the papers in front of me didn't lie. The emails didn't lie. The closed-door deals didn't lie. I wasn't imagining this betrayal. It was cold, hard, documented fact. Susan slid a form across the desk toward me. This gives us the authority to act on your behalf. We'll also need to serve notices to the buyers to inform them they've been defrauded. I signed without hesitating, my hands steady for the first time all day. We'll file everything first thing tomorrow, she said. Expect things to get ugly fast. I told her they already were. When I left her office, the sun was just starting to set, throwing long shadows across the pavement. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the horizon, wondering how many lies it had taken to build the wall they had shoved me behind. And then my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. We need to talk. Don't make this worse than it has to be. No signature, no name, but I knew exactly who it was. Trevor. The audacity of it, to steal from me, lie about it, block me, and then act like I was the one causing trouble, made something cold settle deep in my bones. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. because in less than 48 hours, he was going to get served hard. That night, I barely slept. I kept imagining them sitting around the dinner table, Trevor, Mom, Dad patting each other on the back, congratulating themselves for pulling it off. I wondered if they toasted to it, if they laughed about how easy it had been. I wondered if they even thought about me at all. The next morning, Susan's office filed the injunction. The process server delivered notices to the buyers, informing them that they had purchased a home under fraudulent conditions and were now part of an ongoing legal dispute. Apparently, that conversation did not go well because by noon I got a furious call from the new owner's lawyer demanding an explanation. Susan handled it calmly, laying out the evidence in chilling detail. That same afternoon, the rail bomb dropped. I was at Ms. Evelyn's, nursing a coffee and trying to steady my nerves when my email pinged with a message from Susan. Attached was a scanned letter, a letter my parents' lawyer had sent in response to the injunction. I opened it, my palms sweating. At first glance, it looked formal, professional, like a standard legal rebuttal. But halfway down the page, my stomach flipped. They weren't just denying the fraud. They were accusing me, claiming that I had informally agreed to give Trevor authority over the house, claiming that I had verbally consented to the power of attorney because I was mentally distressed and no longer capable of handling the property. In short, they were saying I was incompetent, that I had willingly given it all up because I wasn't fit to manage my own life. I stared at the screen, too stunned to move. They weren't trying to defend themselves by claiming it was a misunderstanding. They were trying to destroy my credibility completely, turn me into the villain of my own story. I didn't realize I had dropped the coffee cup until I heard it shatter against the floor. Ms. Evelyn rushed in, concern etched across her face, but I barely heard her. I forwarded the letter to Susan with shaking fingers. She called me 5 minutes later. "They're playing dirty," she said bluntly. "They know they can't win on facts, so they're trying to smear you." "What do we do?" I asked, my voice hoarse from the sheer rage boiling inside me. "We hit harder," Susan said without hesitation. "We subpoena every record, every email, every phone call. We drag every one of their lies into the light and burn it." I hung up and sat there, breathing hard, the shattered pieces of the coffee cup glittering at my feet. The gloves were off now. This wasn't just about getting my house back. This was about making sure they never got the chance to do this to me or anyone else ever again. That night, I wrote a letter. Not a text, not an email, a real letter. One addressed to my parents. I didn't threaten. I told them the truth, written in cold, brutal sentences. That they had broken something that would never be fixed. That they had chosen Trevor's lies over my life. That whatever happened next was on them, not me. I didn't send it yet, but just writing it made something inside me shift. The courthouse smelled like old paper and something worse. Desperation, maybe. I sat outside the courtroom, clutching a folder of evidence so tightly the edges dug into my palm. Susan sat beside me, calm as ever, scrolling through her notes like she was prepping for just another day at the office. For me, it felt like I was walking into a firing squad. We didn't have to wait long. The door creaked open and Trevor swaggered in, wearing an ill-fitting suit and a smirk that made me want to break something. My parents followed behind him, both dressed like they were attending a funeral, my funeral. When Trevor saw me, he winked. Actually winked. It took everything I had not to get up and slammed that wink right off his smug face. Susan leaned closer and murmured, "Stay cold. Let them bury themselves." I nodded, barely trusting myself to breathe. The judge arrived a few minutes later, a stern woman with sharp eyes who looked like she'd been handing out justice since before any of us were born. She called the case and asked the lawyers to approach. Susan opened with a bang. She laid out the evidence like a surgeon opening a chest cavity, clean cuts, no wasted motion. The forged documents, the sudden sale while I was conveniently out of the country. Trevor's lawyer, a pale, sweating man who looked like he regretted taking the case the second he saw Susan, tried to object, tried to derail, tried to spin it. But Susan was relentless. Then came the real bombshell. Susan introduced an affidavit from the notary who had supposedly witnessed the fake power of attorney. An affidavit stating that she had never notarized any document for me. That she had been paid in cash by Trevor to stamp blank document. The judge's face hardened visibly. Trevor's lawyer stuttered something about misunderstandings and lack of clear communication, but it was over before it started. The judge asked Trevor directly, "Did you forge your brother's signature and fraudulently sell his home?" Trevor looked at his lawyer. His lawyer looked at the floor. Trevor shrugged and said, "I mean, it's not like he was using it." The entire courtroom sucked in a breath at once. Even the bailiff's eyebrows went up. The judge slammed her gavel once. "Enough." She turned to my parents, who were visibly wilting under her stare. "Did you witness your son forging documents he had no legal right to sign?" My mother opened her mouth probably to spin some sob story, but my father spoke first. "We thought it was better for everyone," he said flatly, like he was explaining why they decided on chicken instead of beef for dinner. The judge just stared at them, her face unreadable. "Better for whom?" she asked. No one answered, because everyone already knew. Trevor. It had never been about fairness. Never about family. It was about cleaning up Trevor's mess one more time, even if it meant burning me to the ground to do it. The judge called for a recess before rendering her verdict. I stumbled out into the hallway, my head pounding. Susan was right behind me, her face unreadable. "You need to prepare yourself," she said quietly. "This isn't just about the house anymore." I leaned against the cold marble wall, trying to steady my breathing. "What do you mean?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "They committed multiple felonies," she said. "Forgery, fraud, witness tampering, perjury. The DA's office is reviewing everything right now. Criminal charges are very likely. I didn't know whether to laugh or throw up. All I had ever wanted was my house back. Now my family might go to prison. I sat down hard on the bench, head in my hands, as the walls of my old life came crashing down around me. Trevor must have sensed it because he sauntered past me on his way to the restroom and muttered under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear, "You're still gonna lose, man. Blood's thicker than water." For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something strange. Pity, but not for him. For the sad, broken version of me that had ever believed blood was thicker than betrayal. When court resumed, the judge didn't waste time. She ruled the sale null and void, effective immediately. Ownership of the property reverted back to me. The buyers, the poor couple who had unknowingly bought stolen goods, were instructed to vacate within 30 days. Trevor was fined for contempt and referred for criminal investigation. My parents were formally cited as co-conspirators. But as I walked out of that courtroom, victory didn't taste sweet. It tasted like ashes. Because the truth was, the house wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It had been the place I thought I was building my future. And now it was just a monument to betrayal. After the courtroom emptied, I sat on a bench outside, staring at the floor, not moving even when the building lights flickered once, a silent reminder they were closing soon. Susan eventually found me, a manila envelope tucked under her arm. "You won," she said simply. I didn't answer, because it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving a house fire and standing in the ashes while everyone else walked away blaming the wind. "You'll need to be back at the house tomorrow," Susan continued carefully. "The buyers will be served notice formally. You'll have possession again by noon." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She patted my shoulder once, solid, steady, and left me to figure out what surviving was supposed to look like. I didn't go home that night. I drove aimlessly through the city, the lights blurring into smudges against the windshield, my body moving on autopilot. When I finally parked, it was outside a cheap motel on the far side of town, the kind of place where no one asks questions and the vending machine hums louder than the TV. I paid cash, locked the door, collapsed onto the stiff mattress fully clothed. I dreamed of locked doors and missing keys. The next morning, I pulled up in front of my old house, my house, and sat there for a long time. The new owners, Charles and Diane Fields, were already packing their car, their faces drawn tight with exhaustion and resentment. They didn't speak to me. I didn't blame them. They had been victims too, just collateral damage in my brother's personal game of Monopoly. When they finally pulled away, I stepped onto the porch. The key still fit the lock. The door swung open with a creak. Inside, everything smelled wrong: cheap candles, new carpet glue, unfamiliar food. They had tried to make it theirs. Now it was neither theirs nor mine. I wandered through the house like a ghost, touching surfaces that used to feel like part of my skin. The living room, where I spent endless Sundays nursing hangovers and laughing at bad movies. The kitchen, where I learned how to cook pasta that wasn't burnt to a crisp. Everything felt hollow. In the master bedroom, I found something taped to the closet door. A note, scrawled in Trevor's unmistakably sloppy handwriting. "Should have let it go. You're gonna end up alone anyway." I read it twice, then a third time. Then I laughed, a real, harsh bark of a laugh that echoed off the empty wall. Trevor still thought he could define me. He didn't realize that he already lost, not just the house, but me. Because whatever twisted loyalty I had clung to all those years was dead now. He had killed it himself. I took the note, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it into the trash without ceremony. Then I walked the house room by room, gathering up everything that still felt like mine. A photo album hidden at the back of a drawer. A worn sweatshirt tucked behind the water heater. Little pieces of a life that wasn't completely dead yet. It took an hour. I locked the door behind me and called the real estate agent Susan recommended. The house went up for sale the next morning. It sold in less than 2 weeks for cash. The day after closing, I drove to the bank and watched as the money hit my account. That night, my parents called. First Mom, then Dad. Then, after a long, hollow silence, Trevor. A week later, a letter showed up at my temporary address. Just 6 words on a plain sheet of paper. "We did it for your own good.